Another Man City player who's hoping to stay is defender John Stones. He's been, of course, troubled with several injuries, for a number of seasons now. He missed over 30 games last season, started just
Yeah,
6 games in the Premier League. He's not played since February, since injuring his thigh in a Champions League game against Real Madrid. He's since opened up recently about the dark days he's experienced on the sidelines, admitting that he'd even considered whether to continue playing or not. So,
yeah.
despite those sort of physical and mental battles, he's keen to put those injury troubles behind him now, and he's also expressed a desire to stay. In his words, wants to shut down speculation over a summer exit, and that's despite reports of his former club Everton being interested in re-signing him. So, it looks like Stones is set to remain at City for at least one more season. He's got a year left on his contract, Stephen. What do you make of what Stones has had to say on his future and sort of the challenges he's faced on the sidelines?
Difficult. I love John Stones. I think he's a remarkable footballer. A fit John Stones. If John Stones had had half the injuries that he had, we're probably talking about Man City's greatest ever defender. I really rate him that highly. I think he's a special footballer. Yeah, remarkable. But I think he's been here for like best part of 10 seasons, and he's only played more than 20 games in four of them. So like he's just permanently injured, unfortunately. And last season, felt like a sort of tip of the iceberg in terms of not tip of the iceberg. Just it was the biggest example yet of his injuries affecting his season when City needed him. It's really difficult on this because I think he wants to stay, but I think City would let him go in a heartbeat if someone came in and offered a decent fee for him, and they'd let him go. I think because we just haven't got the space. We haven't got the space. We got Vitor Rice there, like the Brazilian young lad. He just looks like a mini John Stones. Like even the way he plays stylistically, look, it's just we dad, but and just it was I forgot who we played in the Carabao. Who was it now? We played in the Carabao last season when he played Burton. Well, not Burton. It was someone like that.
Plymouth, was it? I think it's
Plymouth,
Plymouth.
actually, right?
Yeah.
Plymouth, yeah, just Plymouth. But I would argue, actually, being a young lad going to Plymouth, where it's physical and aggressive, could be difficult. But he handles the physicality so well. Good in the air, tall, lean, composed on the ball. He looks like a 19-year-old John Stones. And John Stones is never available. The only thing John Stones, not the only thing, the main thing he's got going for him right now is his homegrown, eligibility because City need homegrown players. Hence the links to Livramento, hence the links to Morgan Gibbs White, because we need to sign someone who can get the quota up so the players can be registered. But Guardiola made such a big deal about, we can't go into the season with players who aren't available. I mean, Guardiola said also he doesn't want, to leave 4 or 5 people at home in the stands. The only thing I would say is like John Stones, this sounds really harsh, but there's a good chance you don't have to worry about leaving him in the stands anyway, because he's probably not going to be available. Like, that's the other way of looking at it. So if John Stones doesn't go, he's probably going to be injured all the time anyway. But then I don't think City want to sit on. I don't know what he's on, 250K a week. Yeah, I would guess it's a fair amount of money. You can't just like have a player sat there for another year earning that one. It's an awful lot of money that, and that's pushing £1 million a month. Like rough estimate, he's on at least 8 to 10 million a year, and that's an awful lot of money. When you're trying to rebalance the squad build and all that kind of stuff. So I think he wants to stay. I think Gundogan wants to stay for what it's worth too. I think De Bruyne wanted to stay. We know De Bruyne wanted to stay, but that's not, the sentimentality can't kick in here. We have to move on, and you can't have the collection of centre backs that you've got. Vardiol looks a potential revelation at left centre back now. That has to be a position now. We've got Eight Nori there, and now Nico Riley can play that role. In the way that City are moving forward. So there you go. You've got one guy locked down there, and in terms of starting alongside him, it's going to be Diaz. But after that, like, can you ignore Kusanov there because he looks a really promising, fast-paced young centre back who won't get injured. Vitor Reis, Guardiola loves the Kanji as well. Ake, we haven't mentioned him yet. There's just too many centre backs. Someone has to move on. We can't keep 7 centre backs. How many is there? So, well, let me count them again. Vardiol, Diaz, Akanji, Ake, Stones, Kusanov, Reis. Yeah, that's 7. Like, that's just too many. Like, 2 of them have to go. For me, annoyingly, it probably would be Ake and Stones because they can't stay fit. To be honest, I think I'd rather move on Akanji and Stones than Ake because he's a bit more versatility. They can play on the other side, and I think I trust him to be more fit than Stones. I don't want either of them to go for what it's worth. I think Ake and Stones in particular, brilliant players, and Stones is a phenomenally likable, phenomenally talented footballer. But I'm purely business head and purely, squad planning. Stones is just not available. I don't trust him to be available, and that sounds really sad saying that, but I don't think Guardiola does, and I think there's going to be some really awkward conversations. And the issue City have got is I don't know who's going to come in for him because he's not fit. and the wages that he'd asked for would be high, and I just don't think anyone will come in for him. So we've got a very tricky situation to manage there.
Yeah, again, it's another sort of tricky one. Is Stones is such a on his day, such a fantastic player, and he's been at that club now for I think this will be ninth season if he was to stay. Um, it's just a really with those fitness issues, it makes it very tricky to keep him on such a high wage, I guess, and with all those other options that City have got now as well. Um, if Stones was fully fit and was playing at his absolute best, would he be one of the first choice centre backs, you think, under Guardiola, or is say, Diaz and Guardiola sort of the nailed on first choice centre back pairing, do you think?
If John Stones hadn't really had any injuries the past few years, he'd be playing every single week.
Yeah.
100%. Absolutely 100%. We saw that inverted midfield role he did explode brilliantly in the Champions League final, where he had the most assists by any player since Messi in the Champions League final, and he won man of the match, and he was in the Champions League team of the season. He was just remarkable. Like, absurd. Like, if you go watch that back, find a video of John Stones' performance there. It's a once in a lifetime performance. If that was a compilation of Zidane, everyone would be buzzing. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. It was a special performance in the biggest game in Manchester City's history, the biggest game in any club's history. Like, that is that level of iconic. It's like the biggest game you could possibly imagine at a club football level. It's that level. It's obviously not a World Cup final, but it's as big as it can be in terms of the club to win 3 leagues in a row, to win the club's first ever Champions League, to win a treble. Stones to be that good in a weird role against a side as good as Inter Milan, remarkable. Guardiola would play him every single week if he'd stay fit. The reason he hasn't played and he's in this situation right now entirely because unfortunately his body can't handle it.